What's up guys, welcome back to another video. So I recently had a couple friends start playing Pokemon Go. I thought to myself, I don't really have a lot of videos for people who are just getting started. Although Pokemon Go is a pretty simple game, it can be pretty daunting at first as there is a couple things you need to learn. So today I thought we'd go through all the attack mini games and how to best do them for anyone who is trying to get into battling or any even more advanced PvP players who want to find out a better way to do all the charge attack mini games. I will also leave a tip at the end for you advanced players on when you actually don't want to go ahead and make sure you're getting excellence on these mini games. So stay tuned for that or check the timestamps below if you want to skip to that. Let's get into it. Now, before we start, a common pattern you're going to see with all these charge attack mini games is that doing circles with your finger is always going to be the best strategy. Instead of just putting your finger down, if you're doing a little circle, there's a higher chance that you're hitting more of the bubbles, which means you're more consistently going to be getting excellence on all these mini games. We're going to start here with the normal type. When it comes to normal type, you're going to want to memorize where the little bubbles are going to appear, and you're going to want to do little circles over those bubbles. You're going to start in the top right, go to the bottom right, go to the middle right, go to the left middle, and then go to the bottom left, go to the top left, and then reverse all the way back. So here we go. We're going to go top right. It's going to drop down, go to the middle, go to left, and then reverse all the way back. But remember, when you are doing the normal mini game, always do little circles and then just follow where the bubbles will go ahead and appear. Let's move on to one of the hardest charge attack mini games, and that's going to be the flying type. Now, the flying type bubbles are going to come in the most random, but there's one strategy I find that helps a lot. How the flying type mini game works is that all the bubbles will be coming in from the right side and they will slowly appear. What I recommend doing is taking your finger, you're going to make big circles on the right side of your screen to try your best to get all the bubbles. The bigger and faster the circles, the higher chance. Sky attack's coming in here now, so I'm just gonna make these circles on the right side of the screen, and pretty much, as you can see, none of the bubbles are coming through. Now, if some of the bubbles do end up going through, then you can always, put your finger over to the left side of the screen to try to grab it. I've heard other people doing different strategies for this, so if you have a better strategy for the flying type minigame, comment them below. Let's move on to the poison type minigame. Now, the poison type minigame is a pretty easy one, and it has a similar pattern to pretty much a couple other the mini games. Let's take a look at it right now. Pretty much all the bubbles are going to appear in the center of the screen, so all you really have to do is go ahead and make circles with your finger in the center of the screen. It's very simple, and you're going to see this pattern very commonly. You're going to hit the sludge bomb here and just make circles in the center of the screen, and you'll pretty much get an excellent each time. We're going to talk about it later, but the fighting type mini game has a pretty similar thing to this. This is not too complicated of one, so let's move on. Moving on to the ground type mini game. Now, this is a more difficult mini game for some people, but I'm going to show you how I do it. Now, when it comes to the ground type mini game, the bubbles will appear, I believe, starting on the left, and they'll go to the right, left, right. What you're going to want to do is make mini circles and follow the trail of the ground type bubble. So it's going to start on the left. You're going to want to make little bubbles and follow it back and forth and back and forth. Make sure your bubbles aren't too small, as you will miss some of the bubbles as they do go up and down. But remember, just go left to right, following the bubbles and making little circles as you follow it. Making little circles is the most important key to any mini game, and that will pretty much just guarantee an excellent every time. Now let's move on to bug type. Now, bug type is like an easier version of the flying type mini game. The bubbles are going to come from the left, and they're just going to make a little up and down kind of sway wavy motion. Now, it's really easy to do this. You're just going to want to pretty much just make mini circles in the center of the screen, and you should have no problem going ahead and taking it down. Most of these mini games are going to have the exact same pattern, in which all you have to do is make circles in the center of the screen, and you should have no problem doing it. You can even make your circles a little bit closer to the left side of the screen if you want to make sure you catch all of them as they appear. And if you miss any of them, you can bring your finger over to the right side of the screen to make sure you catch them. Remember, circles are always your best friend. Let's move on to the dark type mini game. The dark bubbles will appear in kind of like groups of 4, and you're pretty much going to want to make circles, but the circles must be delayed. So here you go. They're going to appear at the top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. I like to make a little, N shape with my fingers when I'm doing it, kind of rotating from one to another. So again, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. You can even just do big circles in the middle, and again, that will work, just doing giant circles in the middle like this. Here you go. We're just going to do big circles in the middle, and as you can see, we're catching all of them. Now let's talk about the ghost type. Now, the ghost type is probably one of the tougher mini games. The bubbles will appear at the top, and then the bottom, the top, and the bottom, top, and bottom, top, and bottom. Now, what you're going to do with this one is you're going to make kind of oval shapes to grab it, but the oval shapes don't want to be too fast. So we're going to throw a shadow ball here, and pretty much we're going to want to make giant oval shapes with our finger as the bubbles appear. As you can see, the bubbles are going to kind of appear in 2 different layers. You just want to make sure that your circle is not too fast so you miss the top or bottom layer. Show you one more time here. We're just going to make these big oval shapes grabbing the bubbles as they appear, kind of like a figure 8 shape. Now let's take a look at the water type minigame. Now the water type minigame is going to be similar to the bug type minigame. However, the bubbles will appearing from the opposite side and they will be doing kind of a wave shape. What I recommend doing is going to be making small circles as always in kind of like the right side of the screen as the bubbles appear. Pretty much none of the bubbles will get by your finger if you are swiping it fast enough, as those circles pretty much lock any of the bubbles getting through. Now another strategy that people do is going to be called the follow the wave strategy. Hold your finger in the bottom left corner and then as the bubbles appear, let them fall into your finger. This strategy works as well, but I find it less efficient than the other strategy because sometimes your finger can accidentally miss some bubbles and there's no fail-safe method in case you do miss any of the bubbles, since the bubbles will pretty much just disappear off screen. I definitely recommend the first strategy, but you can do the second strategy if it's preferred. Now let's move on to the next type. Now the grass type is pretty much the bug type. However, the bubbles are a little more spread out. You're going to want to do the same thing as the bug type. You're just going to make circles in the center and you will catch every single grass little bubble here. Again, you can even make your bubbles closer to the left side of the screen in case you do end up missing some of them. You can recuperate, but again, I prefer to just do them in the center of the screen and just make these giant bubbles. You will pretty much never fail this. Now let's talk about the electric type. Now there are two methods to do the electric type minigame. The first one's going to be similar to that water minigame method we talked about in letting the bubbles fall into your finger, and the second one is just going to be the more safe method, and it's pretty much just making giant circles. Talk about the first method here. You're going to want to start on the left side and you're just going to follow your finger as the bubbles appear and let them fall into your finger. It does take practice as you need to learn exactly where the bubbles land, but that is how you do the first method. Now I prefer the second method here, and it pretty much just requires making giant circles at the bottom. As you can see, if I make giant circles at the bottom, none of the bubbles will get through. The tagline for this video should be when in doubt, make circles, as anytime you're making circles, it pretty much gives you a higher percentage of hitting all those bubbles. Now let's talk about the psychic type. Now the psychic type is going to be similar to the fairy type, which we haven't talked about, but it pretty much requires you to just make a giant circle and follow with your finger. Now again, there are two ways to do the psychic type minigame. The first method is going to be just following the psychic with your finger, but you want to make sure you keep up with this circle, because if you don't keep up with it, then some of the bubbles will actually end up escaping and it can be hard to catch them after. Now the second method here is going to just be making giant circles in the middle. Now this method can work very well, however it does require you to pretty much be really active in making those circles, as you know, if you do end up missing any of those bubbles, then it can be hard to recuperate. One more time here, making those giant circles in the middle. You just want to make sure you're in line with the psychic minigame here. And there you go, that's how you do the psychic type minigame. Now let's talk about dragon. Now dragon type is actually one of the easier minigames I find. Pretty much the meteors will come down from the left side and you have to pretty much make sure you catch all of the meteors. Let me show you how to do it. Now what I'm gonna do for the dragon type here is pretty much when one of those little meteors appear, I'm just gonna make a little circle on it to catch. Kind of like this, as the meteors appear, I take my finger off, go on another meteor, make a little circle, and then continue with all of the meteors. It's generally pretty easy, you just gotta be pretty quick from jumping between the meteors. Like that, from one meteor to another, and there you go. Now let's talk about the ice type. Now the ice type I find is similar to the electric type. What you're going to want to do for the ice type is you're going to want to go ahead and make, guessed it, circles in the middle. Make circles as the ice falls onto your fingers, and it's pretty easy to go ahead and catch all of them. Just make circles in the middle. Again, you're going to see the same pattern with pretty much all of these mini games, as once you know the strategy, it's pretty similar for all of them. Another strategy people do is as the ice appears, you kind of like swing your finger back and forth, but like you just saw, you can miss like the ones on the outside sometimes, so making those circles in the middle is a better strategy. Now let's talk about the fairy type, which like I mentioned is similar to the psychic type minigame. I find the fairy type is like a slower version than the psychic type minigame. Now all you're going to do for the fairy type minigame is just follow the circle like the psychic type minigame. It's going to start at the top and it's going to go down to the left, and as you can see there is a little like marker showing you how big the circle is with those little lines popping out, so you can kind of tell how big that circle is. Now let's talk about the fighting type, which again is a very easy minigame to do. When it comes to the fighting type, all the bubbles will appear in the center of the screen, and all you have to do is just make circles on it. This is going to be pretty much like the poison type minigame. You're going to want to pretty much just make circles in the center of the screen and you'll have no problem getting all the fighting type minigame. I remember as a newer player, I was always trying to tap all the fighting type bubbles as they appear, but that is not the strategy you want to go with. Just make circles in the middle as fast as you can, and you will pretty much get excellent on the fighting type minigame every single time. Now we're coming down to the end of it. Let's talk about the rock type minigame. minigame. Now, rock type I find is kind of like the ice type minigame, however, a little different angle. For the rock type minigame, all the rocks are going to be coming in from the left side of the screen, kind of in, you know, a diagonal pattern. Now, what you want to do for the rock type minigame is pretty much just make circles similar to the ice type minigame, except you're actually going to be making sideways circles instead of those horizontal circles. Showing you here one more time. It's generally pretty easy once you get it down, but just make these circles here right on the diagonal side of the screen, and you should have no problem getting excellent on that one as well. Second last, we have the steel type minigame. Now, this is probably one of the hardest minigames other than flying type, and there's a couple different ways you can actually do this minigame. Now, let me show you the first method here, and that's just going to be following where the bubbles appear. The bubbles are going to appear in an X fashion. You're pretty much just want to swipe your finger as they appear. So there you go, there you go, there you go, there you go, there you go. There is kind of a tell when the bubbles will appear and what direction they will appear, because there is that little, you know, gray striped line that does appear before the bubbles, so you can tell. Some people also prefer to just make circles in the center of the screen like always, and it does work as well, but you do end up putting a little more effort into it when you could really easily just follow the pattern. The final type here we're going to talk about is going to be the fire type. Now, the fire type is similar to the poison and the fighting type. It pretty much has the exact same pattern, except maybe a little different. You just want to go ahead and make circles in the center of the screen. Let me show you how. Here you go. Just make circles in the center of the screen. The fire should go ahead and appear. It is a little lower than the other two, but just go ahead and make circles. You should have no problem getting excellent every time. That's how you do the fire type. With that being said, that's pretty much how you do all the little mini games. Now let's talk about an advanced tip for any of you more advanced players on when you would actually not want to go ahead and get excellent on these mini games. People have asked me before, but when would you so-called undercharge, which is pretty much when you get either a nice or a great or even not even a bonus on these mini games, when would you want to do that in a PvP match? Well, this technique here is called undercharging. I have talked about it in past videos, but let me talk about an example on when you would want to do it. Now, the whole reason you want to undercharge something is so that you can actually farm it down. If you don't know what farm down means, it pretty much just means killing the opposing Pokemon with your fast moves and not your charge moves. So what sometimes people will do is they'll go ahead and get a nice or a great, not an excellent on their minigame, so their charge move does less damage, meaning they don't actually kill the opposing Pokemon. They can actually farm down the Pokemon so they can KO the opposing Pokemon with their fast moves so that they have initial energy going into the next Pokemon. Let me give you an example. Now, we're going up against Sandela, so obviously this is not how a real matchup would go, but we're just going to use this as an example. Let's say, you know, we're against a Combuskin with our Swampert, and we pretty much want to make sure that we're farming down this Pokemon so we have initial energy on the next Pokemon. We're going to get to our Hydro Cannon here, and we're just going to hit, you know, a couple bubbles here. I'm just going to do like that amount of bubbles, and this should not KO now. Since I didn't do the excellent, it didn't KO, and now I could go ahead and do 2 more fast moves to KO the opposing Combuskin, and I had initial energy, and as you can see, I'm already at another Hydro Cannon. We can do it again here. I'm gonna go ahead, just hit a couple bubbles, and now this Hydro Cannon will do less damage. It shouldn't KO this Macargo. There you go, and now we can go ahead and farm down this Pokemon for extra energy. Now, obviously, the opposing Pokemon is not KOing, and then now, as you can see, we're almost at an Earthquake, and we can pretty much Earthquake this final Pokemon. The whole point of undercharging a move is so that you don't actually kill the Pokemon, and you leave it with just a sliver of health. You can go ahead and farm down and have initial energy for the next Pokemon. If you do have any questions about that, comment below, but that's pretty much the video, guys. It is a pretty basic video, and I might start making more of these basic videos as a maybe of a playlist for some of these newer players so they can go ahead, get a head start on the game, and kind of understand more of the mechanics better. Comment below if you have any better methods to do any of the mini games I talked about. We're gonna see you guys in the next one. Follow for more tips, baby. Peace.